As we heard today already, a lot discussions on the renewables, how growth we have now, what I expected in the future. Still in Lithuania, we have quite a lot of challenges as well, and in the region probably. We named that unprecedented growth of renewables, but probably we'll discuss, is it so? We still have a lot of gap to fill in and some challenges which still comes from regulatory financing issues. On the other hand, we heard from Minister today on enormous growth of consumption from 60 to 70 terawatt hours. From what we have now, it's really extremely large amount. And so probably the question is of how we will balance all those needs of a lot of renewables, of very high consumption, hydrogen coming on the stage as well. So probably I will start from a review of the current stage and challenges we have in the region and in Lithuania, most probably. Martynas, will maybe start from you, from Renewable Confederation. You quite well see the situation on the ground, how we are doing. We still face some challenges, and what was in the plans of the minister showed. Do you expect that these are still doable, as a lot of megawatts reserved, as also TSO showed? But we are still slow, I think. We still have much more improvement to do to reach what we plan.
Okay. So, yes, I used to talk a lot with the developers of wind and solar power plants, and I could more or less say the problems of those developers. Okay. What is good about the situation is that development of wind and solar is quite fast during the last year, and it's basically due to very high prices in 2022, and everybody started to invest into the small solar power plants, and that's actually it was a boom for investment, and now we have a result of that investment boom. Also, it's a consequence of policy, which regards renewable energy. It's a policy which started probably 2015, 2016, when we finished discussion about a nuclear power future, and we started to develop a renewable energy future, and we created this prosumer scheme for solar power plant at that time, and also we created the possibility to invest into wind power plant, and those projects which was planned at that time, now actually we are already have implemented, and now we have also results of this green policy. So that's okay. So now I just checked the data. So if we take data of this year from 1st January 2023 until yesterday, so it's wind power producers in Lithuania produced about 20% of demand, and solar about 7%. So 27% is not bad if you compare to what was 1 year ago. But if we are talking about the future, so I will be a little bit less optimistic, because the situation a little bit changed if we compare to the situation we had last year. But year 2022, it's really a year of investment, but it was also a year of lost opportunities in Lithuania. So because we had this law which stopped investment into this large solar power plant, and it was stopped at the time when the conditions for investment was the best, when banks actually were in the row for investment, for financing of those projects. Now we have changed situation, so it's quite difficult to find investment for projects which just planned for selling of electricity into the market. So because banks are very concerned about regulation, about uncertainties in regulation, about cannibalization effect threat. So because we don't have such a policy of investment, of somehow to growth of technologies which increase demand side elasticity, which increase demand side response technologies, which increase investment into the batteries. So we just now we have information that we will not have a harmony link in 2030. That's also decreases, make a situation worse for investors. So my expectation is that if we take all the projects in the pipeline, which has already paid even guarantees, so it's only about 1/3 of those projects will be implemented if we don't change anything in regulation here in Lithuania. So I wouldn't be so optimistic that we could achieve parity earlier than 2030 in Lithuania.
Mr. Darius, you are representing producer here in our panel. What's your thoughts? What's your plan? You calculate curtailments, possibilities, availability of the grid, and your development. When do you think we'll get that, ratio of production and consumption?
It actually will depend a lot how fast new measures and new strategies in the country, in the region will appear about how to grow dramatically flexibility in the system. If to look at the evolution of renewables, first phase was that renewables were too expensive comparing to fossil fuel generation, and the first barrier was to win the tender and to get the subsidy. So that faded away with cost effectiveness of wind and solar. Second barrier was permitting. Not in my backyard, long permitting periods, etc., etc. Societies and governments made a lot of measures to make it faster, and it's less and less an issue to develop renewables. The third barrier, grid capacity. Grid capacity was a lot of discussions and tensions last year, and this year you see there are not so much of tensions on the grid capacities. Why? Because there is a fourth fundamental and most important fundamental in the further development of renewables, especially when percentage of renewables in the system will grow from 30% to 50%, from 50% to 70%, while approaching 100. The crucial part of the policies needed to grow renewables organically is how to facilitate development of flexibility. Currently, when we see all these promises and different estimates how much of capacities will be developed in Baltic states by 2030, in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, our internal calculation shows that to make it happen, we need from 5 to 10 times more flexibility in the system. And just Kruonis power pump storage plant will not deliver 10 times more flexibility in the system. It will deliver more from 2026 with additional unit which will bring huge amount of flexibility to the entire system, but it will be not enough. We see a huge need of I would not speculate on figure, but a huge amount of batteries, battery capacities by 27 and by 2030, many times more comparing to what we have right now with energy cells. And that has to be carefully designed and delivered to the system in case we would like not to see a slowdown of renewables. Right now it's a huge pipeline which sits in developers' hands, but it will be stopped and slowed down if we will not deliver enough of flexibility in the system. And while approaching 2030, for sure, we will need also, on top of the hydro flexibility, on top of the battery flexibility, we will need more and more dynamic electrolysis flexibility to consume those negative hours and to make a system more stable as much as possible, because in the region we are not only producing negative hours, but we are importing huge amount of negative hours from our neighbors. So therefore, to make kind of organic growth on the green generation side, we have to invest very heavily in batteries, and we need to be prepared while approaching 2030 to be ready to have in the region gigawatt amount type of electrolysis capacities which will work in dynamic mode. If it will happen, those plants which we are right now looking on the screens and hoping that they will be delivered, or at least part of it will be delivered, will be done so.
Mr. Michel, here we can use your nice experience from Netherlands. I understand you do experience a lot of new records, skyrocketing records for the negative prices, more and more. Of course, nice fact for consumers, but not in the long term, not nice fact for producers. What are measures you are taking? What we've discussed, probably flexibility, batteries, some technical means, new means for flexible demand for consumers. What's your experience now? Because you are going through this already, so maybe it's something to take out for us.
No, thank you, and it's a real pleasure to be here, because when I look at the developments now in the Baltic states, it's very similar to what we've also gone through in recent years, and we're still pioneering. Every time when we add more renewables to the system, some new challenges appear. And I think, well, my colleague just gave analytically the good options that you have to deal with flexibility in the system when there's either too much or too little electricity. But basically there are 4 solutions, but all have new problems when you go into their roots. And the first is, of course, you need more interconnectors, as said by the ATSA from NSOE. But there are some countries that think, well, I'm a perfect energy island. I don't want to be connected to it. I'm not referring to any of your neighbors, but I can also point to Norway, which is our own neighbor in a sense, and doesn't want to have energy connectors because they have such cheap electricity. So you need them in the long run, but politically it's difficult. Then the second solution is, of course, forms of energy storage, which can be either batteries or electrolyzers. But the batteries, we have 60 gigawatt of batteries that want to be connected to the grid. And of course, it will never be 60 gigawatt. It will be far, far, far less. And the batteries are actually causing additional congestion because they use the grid twice, when they charge it and when they bring it back to the grid. So they're part of the solution, but they're causing new problems as well because you need to strengthen the grid more. Then there's a third solution, which is more flexibility. I have all electricity nerds as friends, and they send me a text message in the weekend. Hey, I just earned 15 euros because I charged my car. I earned 15 euros because I charged my car, which is, of course, fantastic. That is the type of flexible demand that you want. But large industrial processes are very hard to make more flexible. And you need that. So that will require big changes also to industrial processes that you sometimes need to subsidize, look carefully what to do. And finally, of course, you need more dispatchable generation. The gas-fired power plants need to be converted to hydrogen. But where do you get the hydrogen from, and where do you store it if there are not sufficient salt caverns? So there are solutions, but every solution, is our experience, runs into new problems, and that's why it's good to have all these kind of dialogues to see where we are heading together.
Thank you. So maybe moving from this idea, a quick question towards the grids. We have 3 representatives of the grids operators today. what do you think, is it at all feasible, possible to put all those plans or pros on the renewables only in the grid, which we hear now probably this is a case. We also saw the plans to have maybe small module reactors. Representative Rokas Mazulis said there is a full capacity in the grid, so maybe we'll get other option here, but is it feasible to put for the grid everything on renewables? That's why probably we're coming to that, balance needs. So maybe we can start from our Lithuanian.
Okay. I think that system security is one of the most important things. And I would like to just to split the system security to simplify into two items. System stability, and I will touch on that later. So system stability is related with lots of parameters like voltage, other frequency, etc., etc. And previously, renewables were not able to, they were too volatile. And now they are able to provide grid-forming functionalities, grid-forming services. Another part is related with the periods like Dunkelflaute, called when there is no wind and no sun. And if you have only renewables, so there are no renewables. For that reason, you need to have dispatchable generation, or hydrogen, or SMRs, or something else, which would be flexible. And if first part of stability, first part could be realized with renewables, the second part could be realized with dispatchable generation. So maybe not everything, but having interconnectors and enough capacity of dispatchable generation, that could be realized.
Mm-hmm. Oliver or Robert, maybe you can continue experiencing probably something similar in Germany and in Poland.
Yeah, I think everything was already said. So the point is, from the TSO's perspective, we can connect. If the amount of we can connect generating capacities in the amount which is needed. Yeah, this is just a matter of investment in the transmission infrastructure. What we should realize is that, as it has been discussed already, that the transmission and distribution lines are not enough because you need to have a load on the other side. So in fact, I think this is the case in Poland when this is sometimes misunderstood, that, for example, we have had some curtailments of PV recent months, and the reason was, this was done by the TSO to keep the system secure, but the instruction came from TSO, but the point was that this was due to the system balance. So simply there was no load on the other side, including the power exchange to the other countries. So in fact, we should be aware that regardless how many lines we build, we can even create a copper plate. We will still have this issue that we need to have the load if you would like to generate. So obviously, as the colleagues pointed out before, the solution is to have storage, which obviously helps to consume the surplus of electricity when there is a lot of wind and sun, and then the best way is to generate electricity in the periods out of the same storage facility in the periods when there is no sun and no wind. So, but here the issue is that we do have some storage technologies, the pump storage, which you have in Lithuania, for example, and we have also in Poland. This is the technology which is well proven and is used for decades. The other storage technologies are being developed, and batteries, we have seen it is being used. We can say it's we can say it's already proven, but the batteries they solve the short-term balancing issues. They do not solve the issue of moving vast amount of electricity from season to another season, from summer, the sun, from summer to the winter, yeah? So for that, we need so-called large-scale storage. And here, we need to develop those technologies. Hydrogen seems to be the most prominent, but there is still a lot to be done to make sure that this is efficient, yeah? So that's in my understanding, the essence of the issue, yeah? So if you would like to have the full renewable only power system, we need to have enough short and large scale storages. But there are also other alternatives of the non-CO2 emitting technologies, the nuclear one, which I'm doing now, but I do not want to take too much time, yeah.
Maybe I will specify a little bit for give a word to Oliver. So we are moving towards that idea that the hydrogen is definitely not a question, that is a future. But what we see, we plan, at least in the region or in Lithuanian plans, that we would produce hydrogen from those, surplus we would have remaining from our consumption. But hydrogen production electrolysis is quite expensive as well. And if we need it kind of an affordable cost or affordable price, how do you see from that probably economic, if you can answer that question from the economic perspective, how realistic is to provide affordable hydrogen, producing it only from that small part of, electricity which remains from curtailment or something like that? It's not like, we have a lot of everything and we don't have any costs. So that's an expensive thing, and we plan to use, just a small portion of electricity.
First of all, let me thank you very much for being part of this panel and this discussion, because we see how important we see how important is the discussion and the exchange we can have. And I was this morning quite impressed about the dynamics I feel here in the Baltic region now, not only looking at figures, but also looking at the way it's interpreted, the way the cooperation between the different countries intensifies. And I think we can learn in the different regions from exactly this kind of dialogue. So thank you very much for having me today. I come from an area where today we have 72% of our consumption covered by variable renewables. And I just give you a 1-minute anecdote. 12 years ago when I started working in this, it's the northeast of Germany, we have 44 gigawatts of renewables installed for the time being and continuing every day being more. I saw a slide where we said that technically the stability limit of integrating renewables would be for our area something like 15 gigawatts that we could safely integrate. Today we have 44. And what do we do with the engineer that wrote that down on the slide? Did we fire him? No, he was the head of the system control since 3 years ago, so he managed that we had no blackout and it worked. And that's why dialogue is so important, because today, of course, we cannot tell exactly in 5 to 10 years where are all the technologies, where is everything there. But that makes me fundamentally optimistic, because what was impossible in our own minds, the same people 10 years ago, is now happening every day. And I think I would echo what was said beforehand. It's not a one-size-fits-all story, but we have the asset story that my colleagues, the TSO colleagues, are raising. We have to develop our grid, we have to develop interconnections, we need new types of assets to balance the grid, STATCOMs, MSCDNs, power electronics, all this stuff, which is one element that we're doing and working hard on it. But next to it, you have to do in parallel more. What do I mean? We discussed about flexibility beforehand. My colleagues are so right that what we're experiencing when you're at 70% and you want to go to 100%, you have a complete paradigm shift. Beforehand, we were always talking about generation. You do whatever you want, generation is following you. Now, we have massive electrification. What you said beforehand is exactly what we forecast in our area as well. So flexibility will come from the consumption side, more and more. Because this is, in fact, an increasing path. Of course, not everybody will be able to be flexible, but much more that we can expect today. What do I mean concretely? And you are here in a region that is a front runner and a role model, at least for Germany, I can tell you, in terms of digital transformation. Now we have the possibility, if we go clever, not only to connect and to steer 20 power plants and big consumers, we can connect millions of inhabitants and use the inherent flexibility. We're talking about how cool to charge a car, and in the morning you wake up and you made money. We will have millions of those batteries we don't have to pay on top. So if we use what is happening around, flexibility in generation, flexibility in storage, but massively flexibility in consumption at all voltage levels, households, industry, etc., with price signals, then I think we will make it affordable. And they are coming now exactly to your question, because then you don't have to double pay. Use the batteries in the cars twice or 3 times, not only another battery that you have to do for the system. And this is what we see coming now, when we have the discussions and when you're above 70%. And that's the good news, and that's why I'm optimistic, because we have technologies new coming up, hardware, software, etc. Plus we have this fantastic chance to unlock much more flexibility that is flying all around with price signals. And this is my third element. We have to fundamentally change the market design. Today, the market design with flat prices that are not real-time reacting to the needs of the system, etc., is a waste of value all along the continent. And therefore, I think that the debate that Katarina Magnusiko said, when we're entering in Europe into we need a new market design that is much more reflecting, in fact, the reality of what is produced and consumed, this is the third element. So reviewing system control, using flexibility on the market, and developing the grids. And I think if we do that clever and cross-border and not each one in an island, etc., then I think it's feasible and also affordable what we're doing today.
Martynas, you know the region industry probably best of us. How our industry is ready to get that flexibility? Probably households will get when some incentives will come, or will find that at least pricing so that it's motivating to go to that flexibility. But industry, they can't wait. They need to transform to CO2 less emittent. How they are ready for transforming to hydrogen or any other flexible mean?
Well, situations, everybody understands that investment into batteries and will be feasible in the future, because price differences is increasing, the demand of balancing is increasing as well. So, and everybody understands that sooner or later it will be feasible to invest into batteries. But the problem is that currently it's still not feasible. So therefore everybody just postponed the investment. And we have a situation when, and that situation actually stops investment into renewables and reduces the speed of energy transition. And here I see it's very important what actually was a little bit mentioned by CEO of our transmission network operator. He told about starting of discussion about incentive scheme for business in Lithuania, for those who are going to invest into the batteries, at least, or demand-side response solutions. And if we the second day after government make announcement of incentive scheme for batteries for business, so the life will be much more easier for those who are investing into the wind and solar power plants. So that's everything is very much related here. Talking about hydrogen, yes, of course, it's about further future, but first of all, we want to achieve 75% and then start investment into the hydrogen. So we have a little bit time for, we have to job we should do now before we starting investment into the hydrogen. But of course, the last 20% will be challenging, yes.
But there is also a plan announced by officials that Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, I think, and Poland, they signed also some agreement on understanding that we will develop the hydrogen transportation grid as well. So maybe it's questions also for everyone, how to compare. We plan to have export cables towards Poland. The other one we'll ask later on with Estonia. But we plan as well the huge, probably, transportation new grid for hydrogen. But there should be some economical logic. Is it more feasible to transport electricity, having in mind it's not Africa or something like this? We will be well interconnected, or produce hydrogen and then export it to Germany, Poland, which we saw will be importing countries of those. How to understand that logic of what is more feasible economically, either to use electricity, export, or produce hydrogen and export that. Olivier, you are showing that you understand the question, so maybe from German perspective.
Maybe very briefly, because I'm curious to see how the others see it, because we saw how interesting it was to see the three ministries also seeing it a bit differently. What we see and what we deeply believe in is, at the very beginning, we desperately need so many green electrons to electrify, so don't use the ones that we produce here to convert them immediately into hydrogen and maybe convert it back then at night when you have no sun. So in this first phase or second phase until 70%, we see electrify, because this is how you combat climate change as quickly as possible, and economically, you're not converting it forth and back and losing 50% of the value of it. But then comes the point where you have exactly what was said rightfully, these hard-to-abate sectors, some parts of industry that cannot electrify, some parts of heavy transportation that cannot. And this is why we see it as a necessary complement that comes then slowly along the path, but don't invert it and jump now massively into it, but start to making this backbone that we need. Start to see macroeconomically where are the countries that have really a surplus long-term of renewables, like your regions. And we will forget it. We will do we have 10 gigawatts projects. That sounds big, but for a country like Germany, it's fine. Because we have to do a bit locally, not to curtail renewables, to optimize, etc. But we will be structural importers. And that is why we're talking to Namibia, Canada, and the Baltic states, where we see that they have better conditions to produce massively, to be competitive, and then to import it via, hopefully, a good infrastructure that we're developing. So I would say we need both. It's the complement, but in the first phase, for us at least, it's electricity first and complemented more and more with hydrogen.
You wanted to add something? Yeah, Darius or Michel.
Yeah, so the Netherlands sees itself both as an importer as well as an exporter of hydrogen, because, in the port of Rotterdam, we think there's a lot of existing infrastructure that can be used, old gas pipelines, convert them to hydrogen. And then we can also export it to Germany. But we also have the North Sea, like you hear of the Baltic Sea, where we will have 70 gigawatt of potential wind turbines, and that will not be used for direct electrification. Direct electrification you should indeed do first, but we only have like 15 gigawatts, which we do now, maybe 30 in the future, so the rest will be hydrogen. But even then, Germany will need so much that you can be both an importer as well as an exporter. And then your key question becomes really important. What is most economically feasible? Will hydrogen from Saudi Arabia, from South Africa, Namibia, Chile be cheaper or not than the hydrogen that is produced here domestically? And nobody knows, in all honesty. The dynamics of the hydrogen market and the economics are still really being developed. What speaks in favor of doing hydrogen and producing it here is that you don't have the double conversion. You cannot, like LNG, ship hydrogen in a simple vessel. No, you have to convert it first to ammonia, to methanol, and then you probably need to crack it again back. So there's 2 times an energy loss, and you don't have that type of energy loss if we have pipelines from the Nordic countries to the rest of Europe. So that speaks in favor of it. What speaks against it is that we have fewer hours of wind and solar excess capacity. So the dynamics are evolving, but also from the perspective of what we've learned in the last 2 years, our dependency on other countries. I think there's a case for energy security, that at least a part of the hydrogen we should produce in our own regions, and that is very important to develop.
I think this is very, very important aspect that I think we have learned it, I think, even worldwide last year. So this the point of the energy security and dependency in that area. One needs to be really cautious about it. Obviously, there is a need for exchange also the energy between the regions, even worldwide. There are some ideas that to ship, I think not hydrogen, but ammonia from other continents. But I think we should always have in the back of our head that we should be able to cover our demand in the crisis situations to some extent. So this needs to be limited by default. So this is, in my opinion, those future visions, would rather not solve all our issues. Yeah. So, and then answering your original question, is it what is more correct?
Hydrogen electricity.
What is more cost-effective, transporting hydrogen or ammonia or electricity? No, I think this question is not answerable now because of the simple reason that, as I mentioned, that hydrogen technology still need to be developed. We do not have the reference plants which are the large scale that we can say these are the reference parameters economically. So I think we need time for that.
Mindaugas, maybe you can update. It was recently announced that Amber Grid, the company being under EPSO-G, is planning to become kind of a hydrogen grid operator in the future. Briefly, what is the objectives of that plan and your thoughts on this?
I would rather continue previous discussion because the most important thing is to have an option, and the price of hydrogen is not the only aspect to decide hydrogen or not hydrogen. You should have an option first of all. But as I'm polite,
truly the option costs.
Yes,
it's costs.
Everything costs.
Option, so.
Everything costs. But as I'm polite, I'll try to answer your question. So Amber Grid is a part of consortium, Lithuanian TSO for gas, and all the gas TSOs from Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland to Germany are elaborating the pre-feasibility stage, elaborating project related to hydrogen backbone. So we are in the pre-feasibility stage. The study will be concluded next year. It could be expected in the middle of next year, and study will provide some kind of answers related with financial aspects, technological aspects, regulatory, legal, and etc., just to have better common understanding between all the partners. And after that, there would be one step further, and the TSOs would be a little bit closer to FIDs or to implementation of the project.
In respect of electricity, we do also have some developments on the electricity grid expansion, especially connection with Germany and Estonia. I understand in May it was a kind of memorandum signed by 50 Hertz and an Estonian TSO on 2 gigawatt line, correct? How that would change the current environment of the region, as we a lot need that export possibilities if we expect to have production from renewables. How do you see that change in the region? Probably it's not only Lithuanian issue.
I think the maps that were shown by your minister are explaining a bit the idea behind it, that we try to interlink better those regions that will have long-term an import need, green electrons, green molecules, whatever, and those regions that are abundant into this thing. And we made an experience 5-6 years ago. We developed with Denmark, between Germany and Denmark, the so-called combined grid solution. And for the first time in the world, we had the idea to make an interconnector, a normal one, between two countries, with adding some offshore wind parks on it. So that in fact you can use this line either to connect the markets when the wind is not blowing, or when the wind is blowing, then the wind goes to one of the two markets. And this works now for a couple of years, and it's a fantastic thing, because in fact you have, for society, a double value, and you're reinforcing system security because you can help each other, etc. And we are driven a bit by this idea, because we see that we have to interconnect stronger now also across the seas, what we did 50 years ago on the continent, where in fact we interlinked and we meshed everything. And we see that in fact North Sea and Baltic Sea become some kind of power banks, green power banks of Europe in the future. So if we do not interconnect the seas, how do you want to use these power banks? If you do, everybody takes a little bit of it into his country, then you make it super inefficient. And you're weakening your whole system and sovereignty, etc. And this was the idea, to see your region here is one that has an incredible potential, and that is using now and kicking off the momentum. And we are in a phase where we say, okay, production-wise, we're already in the middle of the story, but concerning the consumption, we are starting the electrification. And here there is maybe a win-win situation that we discovered, and this is why we signed this letter of intent. Now we have broadened it, so there is a second letter of intent with all the countries of the Baltic states now intended. We submitted the project to the NSOE, the 10-year network development, together Estonia, Latvia, and us. And this is the same idea, a strong line of 2 gigawatts, harvesting offshore as well, to have this multiple value. We are strengthening security of supply, and we are adding also, I think, in today's times, Robert was saying, this bit geopolitical component, to try all of us to be a bit more energy sovereign for whatever happens in the next decades. And that was the driver of this idea, and this is what we are now elaborating more and more in detail. But I want to send the message as well very clear. It's not something that 2 or 3 countries do and then close the doors, because we deeply believe that when in 10 years, we might be sitting here, we will already look at very much offshore grids, and not only every country trying to take his offshore part of the cake, and that's it. And I hope that this is kicking off the momentum, and it's open for Poland, Sweden, Finland, whoever wants to talk to us, to make it good for all our consumers and societies.
Maybe a quick relevant question for maybe first for Darius, but previously with the discussion of ministers, what I heard at least from Estonian ministers saying that while we are still having 3 different pricing zones, we need to connect to one, different regulations still on some market issues. So will Lithuanian producers will benefit from this connection, and how this is probable that will help also to Lithuanian export availability?
I don't know about other producers. We are acting in all 3 Baltic states, Finland and Poland, and we are heavily investing in all 3 Baltic states. Largest portfolio is still in Lithuania, but second largest, very significant one in Latvia, and we are participating in offshore seabed tenders in Estonia. So for us, 3 Baltic states, it's one core market, and it will merge sooner or later to the one bidding zone, one market, and I strongly agree that the further very significant development of possibilities to harvest energy potential of this region relies on offshore grid development. So 1 or 2 lines will not solve the problem. So it's just the beginning to try to understand how much is needed. If Lithuania has 4.5 gigawatt of capacity, potentially Latvia 14, Estonia 7. So altogether 25 gigawatts, one line of 2 gigawatts will not solve the problem. So sooner or later we will start more and more be precise and very specific how not only lines but so-called energy hubs will be developed, letting all market players to have possibility to connect to energy hub very cost efficiently, and when international links will evacuate some energy in electrons to another areas, and also regionally for these energy hubs will be also very important if large-scale electrolysis is nearby as well, because not always efficient is to evacuate energy via lines. If in entire Europe is a negative prices, there is no meaningful job to evacuate energy to the Central Europe. Otherwise, it's better to switch on dynamic electrolysis at that time and collect the energy locally. Therefore, we will see the transition between 2030 and 2040 when development of these hubs combined with huge amount of local electrolysis and local offtake. Local offtake of hydrogen products, it's an essential component in this transition, because after 2040, 2050, 35, maybe we will see more significant export of molecules. Before it's electrons only, and if we would like to grow renewable capacities, which is empowered with large-scale dynamic electrolysis, we have to have local offtake and storage, and Baltic states can do this quite efficiently. So I think, and after 2040, we will see maybe or not these cross-continental hydrogen links, which will be a kind of new bright future, but there is a gap between 2030 and 2040, and that could be filled by local electrolysis and energy hubs.
As we're already going out of time, mostly before very last question, I'll just thought to take at least one question from the audience. So also maybe Darius for you or Martynas, do energy producers think or plan develop specific agreements with the future consumers to create a load of their produced energy?
Yes.
Brief.
It's quite difficult to do in Lithuania and all Baltic countries, because our PPA's market is very shallow in here, and
Right.
but it is possible, especially for large companies as Ignitis.
So for the very last takeaway for us, or what would be the key point from Olivier? I heard flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. Maybe
And
something else. What would be
interconnecting our
the
regions.
key point to take away? Yeah. So you can start.
Yeah. Let's interconnect, let's continue this dialogue and use the different strength of the country, because this is what is Europe. We have an incredible chance, and we might have had to learn it in a painful way. But if we are thinking more consumer side and not only producer side, and if we're interconnecting our regions, then I think we have really a bright future.
No, and I also see the cooperation, the fact that the 3 Baltic countries will put the flexibility demand, the 1,500 megawatts, in a single tender. The fact that there could be one offshore bidding zone for the whole Baltic countries, and then you can also develop this one PPA market, maybe here. So this type of cooperation is a fantastic example also for other countries in Europe, and we need a lot more of that.
Agree. Flexibility, energy hubs, and international links, combined with development also of off-take side of green hydrogen products locally. So that is the key development areas until 2040.
Martynas.
Yeah, I could say that it always happens during the last all the conferences when we start the discussion about growth of renewables, we 99% discuss only about the flexibility solutions. But that's a fact. And that's actually information for politicians where the attention should be put.
For grids to create the flexibility costs a lot. What are grid?
I think that 3 things are very important. Understand interdependencies between all the stakeholders. Understand fairly. Second one is to align moving targets each time. And the most important, not to waste the trust. Nobody needs free rider in the boat.
Yeah. Robert.
Yeah. From my side, there may be something to add is, if we are going to have the competitive markets, then we need to have the relevant market design, and which allows to use those. I prefer I do not like this word flexibility, but you know what you said, like to let's say use those flexibilities in the most efficient way. And this market, such a market design, should price electricity in the right way in terms of time. So in the short periods, going even below 5 minutes. 5 minutes is now, for example, in US the standard, and also in terms of the locations. So having prices in different prices in different nodes, not only on the transmission level, but also on the distribution level. Otherwise, we cannot reach those customers who are willing to change their habits, which, by the way, I am not sure if they are so keen to change their habits. So that's why I prefer storage as a solution, not in general flexibilities.
So let's expect the ministers showed the future document that will lead us to those numbers will actually follow this and will let us to achieve that flexibility and other means we need. Thank you so much for the discussion. I think it was very interesting, and we'll ask Tautvydas to give us other instructions on the lunch, not to keep you here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Ačiū.